Even the Galactic Empire trembled. That beast can't be human. The border station floated in the dark like a lonely watchtower. Its crew worked in quiet routine. Screens glowed. Antennas hummed. Most nights were the same. Empty. Cold. Safe. Tonight was not. A faint mark appeared on the long-range scope. It looked like dust at first. A pixel. A smudge. The junior operator frowned and tapped the console. No change. He ran a quick reset. The mark stayed. "Commander, I have a contact," he said. The room stilled. Chairs stopped rolling. Fingers froze above glass. The commander stepped closer. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Classification? Unknown," the operator said. "No transponder. No registry. No drift tumble. It moves, deliberate." The commander folded her arms. "Expand resolution." The screen sharpened. The mark became a shape. Not a freighter. Not a miner. Not a pirate cutter. It was too large. Too smooth. Too quiet. The hull lines bent the starfield like heat above a road. Light seemed to slide off it and vanish. Someone whispered, "Is that a station?" "No," the commander said. "It's a ship." The word felt heavy. A ship that size should scream in the sensors. Engines. Comms. Shield bleed. But this thing moved like a mountain on silk. Not fast. Not slow. Simply sure. They pinged it on every band. Military hail. Civilian hail. Old codes. New codes. There was no answer. The only return was the soft echo of their own calls. The crew checked their gear again. They checked their own eyes. Nobody wanted to be the one who panicked at a ghost. "Send a packet to Central," the commander said. "Raw scans. Continuous feed." The message went out. The station waited. Time stretched. The unknown ship crossed an invisible line and kept coming. Tension climbed like a slow fever. Men and women who had seen warships before began to trade quiet looks. They had watched carriers rise from slipways. They had watched the Emperor's flagship cast shadow over moons. They had never seen this. Distance. 8 light minutes, and closing. Armaments. Nothing visible. But, "Commander, look at that surface." They zoomed in. The hull was dark, but not simple. Plate over plate, it seemed to drink starlight. Tiny veins of something ran under the skin. Not glowing. Not dead either. Like coals before a breath. "Could be stealth," someone said. "Not this clean," another replied. The commander felt the room tighten. Even the air vents sounded loud. She forced her voice to stay even. "Maintain passive track. Do not provoke." The station whispered with rumors. A few officers muttered about outer rim weapons. One said it had to be a rebel fortress ship. Another said no rebel had the money to build a nightmare like that. No one said what many of them thought. If it was not the Empire, and not a known neighbor, then who? Central called back at last. The reply was thin and clipped. "Continue observation. Do not engage." There was a pause, then softer words, not meant to be comforting. "You are not alone. Other stations see it too." So it was not a glitch. It was real, and it was everywhere. Hours crawled past. The ship did not alter course. It neither sought them nor hid from them. It crossed the border as if borders were a story told to children. The commander's hand sat still behind her back, but her nails pressed half-moons into her palms. "Sir," the sensor chief said, voice low. "I think it is watching us." "How?" the commander asked. "I don't know," he said. "It feels like eyes." They all felt it. That strange weight. As if the dark had leaned in close to hear them breathe. The station's mess hall fell silent. No jokes. No clatter. People ate and left fast. A medic checked heart rates and said nothing. Fear moved through the decks like a cold draft under a door. On the command ring, the big wall display showed the intruder in stark outline. The scale bar sat useless at the corner. The thing was bigger than any dreadnought on record. Maybe bigger than the record books allowed. The commander thought of fleets. She thought of how many destroyers it would take to circle that hull like beads on a string. She did not like the answer. "Try again," she said. "All languages in the book." Hails went out in a dozen tongues. In math. In pulse code. In old refugee bands. The void gave them back their own patience. The unknown ship had no interest in words. The comms officer swallowed. If it wanted to hide, it could. If it wanted to speak, it could. "Then it is choosing this," the commander said. The crew nodded in quiet fear. Across the Empire's net, whispers began to spread. Officers on distant posts sent private notes to friends. Traders repeated what they had heard from a cousin at a customs dock. A child on a mining moon drew the shape on a wall with chalk and called it a whale that ate stars. The Admiralty issued a sharp statement calling it nonsense. The Admiralty also did not sleep. Back on the border, the unknown ship drifted past a beacon buoy. The buoy's tiny camera caught a close pass. For one breath, the hull filled the frame. The plates were not welded like normal plates. They were grown, folded, layered, like armor carved from night. The commander stood straight. Record everything. If this is a test, we will pass it by staying alive. What if it is not a test? Someone asked. Then we do the same, she said. No one laughed. An ensign leaned toward his friend and whispered because he could not hold the thought inside any longer. It can't be human, right? His friend did not answer. His friend kept his eyes on the screen and watched the dark shape move with calm purpose, like a promise coming true. The ship did not hurry. It did not roar. It simply owned the space it crossed. And every person on the border station, brave and trained and loyal, felt the same small truth rise like frost in the throat. Something had changed. The night was no longer theirs. The unknown ship kept moving. Silent, calm, unstoppable. Across the Empire's border posts, messages flickered through encrypted lines. Every station that saw the dark vessel sent their scans and reports to Central Command. And every commander, no matter how proud, ended their transmission with the same word, fear. At first, Central Command dismissed it. Sensor ghosts, they said. Static interference. But soon, the evidence became too real to ignore. 27 different stations across 3 sectors had seen the same shape, the same readings, the same silence. Inside the Central War Hall, admirals gathered under the glow of thousands of star maps. Their armor gleamed, but their eyes betrayed unease. "This is no ghost," said Admiral Corvin, slamming a fist onto the table. "That object crossed the rim line without permission. That is an act of intrusion." "Then identify it," replied another admiral coldly. "No signal, no insignia, no design we recognize. It is not ours. It is not alien. So what is it?" The question hung in the air. No one wanted to answer. On the massive central display, the image of the dark ship rotated slowly. Its hull was black as void, marked only by faint ridges of strange armor. Each panel looked as if forged under gravity, far stronger than any known world. The engineers in the room had no theory. The scientists had no explanation. "Perhaps it's a weapon," someone whispered. "It's watching us," said another. Silence followed. The admirals stood in their uniforms of gold and red, powerful men and women who had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds. Yet none dared to look too long at the shadow on the screen. Meanwhile, at the border, the crew of Outpost Theta kept their eyes locked on the drifting colossus. It filled every scanner, every sensor, and yet emitted nothing. It did not answer hails. It did not show aggression. It simply moved as though the universe itself had parted to let it pass. One young officer whispered, "Commander, what if it's a living thing?" The commander didn't answer. He couldn't. The thought had already crossed his mind. Night cycles passed. Crew slept in short bursts, dreaming of cold metal and unblinking stars. Fear had become a routine, like breathing. Every hour brought new reports. Stations in the nearby sectors were seeing the same ship from different angles. Its trajectory was exact, a straight line into Imperial space. It never turned, never slowed. At the same time, across the Empire's cities, rumors spread faster than the military could contain them. Traders whispered about a black titan moving through the stars. Colonists told stories of a shadow that swallowed light. And deep within the Imperial Senate, politicians demanded answers. "The people are afraid," said one senator. "They demand protection." "From what?" spat another. "A ghost." But in their hearts, they knew it was no ghost. When the emperor himself was briefed, the grand chamber fell silent. He stood before the holomap, gazing at the monstrous silhouette that moved steadily toward his empire's heart. His voice, calm yet heavy, filled the hall. "We have ruled for 10,000 years. No fleet dares defy us. No enemy crosses our border without being reduced to dust. If this ship means to test us, it will learn fear." But even the emperor's confidence cracked slightly when he saw the ship's dimensions. It dwarfed even his flagship. Back on the border, Outpost Theta received a second message from Central Command. "Do not engage. Maintain observation. Prepare for possible contact. The commander lowered the message pad and sighed. Prepare for contact, he repeated quietly, as if tasting the words. They sounded brave. They also sounded like a lie. Every sensor focused on the ship. Every pulse of its movement echoed through their hull. The crew felt it in their bones, though their instruments read no vibration. Hours later, one of the tech officers whispered, "Sir, it's aligning with our station's orbit path." The commander's heart stopped. Confirmed. It's adjusting course, matching our drift speed. The station went silent. Nobody breathed. The giant shadow was no longer just passing by. It was watching them. For the first time, the commander felt small. Not as a soldier, not as a leader, but as a human being standing before something vast and ancient, something that should not exist. "Keep calm," he said, though his voice trembled. "We are not under attack." Then the lights flickered, only for a second, but it was enough to make everyone freeze. The unknown ship remained still, its dark surface gleaming faintly. And though no sound came through the void, every person on the station felt something, like a heartbeat that wasn't theirs. The commander whispered the thought that every soul aboard had buried deep inside. "This thing, it isn't drifting." He turned toward the window, his eyes wide with cold realization. "It's waiting." That night, across the Empire, more reports flooded in. The same dark vessel, the same silence, the same growing sense of dread. And somewhere deep in the Emperor's palace, an old intelligence officer muttered to his aide, "If this ship is not one of ours, then whoever built it must not fear us." He hesitated before adding, barely above a whisper, "And if they do not fear us, then the Empire has already lost." The Empire had seen threats before: rebellions, alien raids, rogue admirals with stolen fleets. But this was different. This was quiet. And quiet things were the ones that stayed in the dark the longest before they struck. Across the star systems, fear began to whisper through the cracks of the great machine that was the Galactic Empire. On distant colonies, soldiers who once laughed at rumors now watched the sky in silence. On trade routes, merchants turned their ships away from the border zones. Even smugglers, men who feared no law, refused to fly near the coordinates where the black shape was last seen. The Empire's control had always been built on one truth. Only the Empire inspires fear. Now, for the first time, fear had a new name, and it was not the Emperor's. Inside the Imperial Council chamber, the air was thick with tension. Holograms of admirals and governors filled the great circular hall, their faces projected from across the galaxy. "The reports are confirmed," said Grand Admiral Seraph. "The object has entered Sector 12. It ignores every hail, every warning. Its trajectory leads straight toward the inner worlds." "Could it be a rogue station?" asked one. "A biological construct?" suggested another. Serapha's jaw tightened. "It's a ship. We've confirmed engine signatures. Unlike any design in our records. We've compared it to every known species technology. None match." The room fell into uneasy silence. Then, a younger admiral leaned forward. "There is one possibility," he said carefully. "An old one. A name from the archives." Seraph frowned. "Speak plainly." "Humans." The word hit the room like a shockwave. For a moment, no one spoke. Then laughter erupted, cold and nervous. "Humans? Those primitives?" One admiral scoffed. "They barely left their own solar system a few centuries ago. They couldn't build a ship half that size." But the younger admiral didn't smile. And yet, something did. The laughter faded. Across the table, one of the intelligence directors rubbed his temples. "We studied them ages ago. They had no fleets, no empire. Weak biology. Divided governments. They were nothing." "Perhaps," said the younger admiral. "But nothing doesn't build a warship the size of a moon." Back on the frontier, the shadow moved. Every hour, its distance decreased. Every second, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. At Outpost Theta, the crew had stopped sleeping. The commander walked the observation deck alone, staring through the viewport. The ship's outline filled the horizon, silent and eternal. It wasn't approaching fast, but it was steady. Every hour, the distance between them shrank like a tightening noose. "Any transmission?" he asked his communications officer. "None, sir. It's like it doesn't even hear us. Or doesn't care." That last part hurt more. They had fought pirates, rebels, and aliens that wanted their worlds. But this thing didn't fight. It didn't threaten. It didn't demand. It simply existed, and that alone was enough to break the strongest hearts. The Empire's propaganda networks tried to contain the panic. On news feeds, spokesmen laughed off the rumors. Superstitions, they called them. Sensor illusions. A trick of deep space radiation. But the truth leaked through. Footage of the black vessel, a blurry recording from a border drone, appeared in underground channels. The video showed a shape so vast that its outline seemed to swallow the stars. The file spread faster than the Empire could erase it. Soon, children in the lower colonies whispered about the ghost in the dark. Miners swore they saw its shadow pass across moons. And on backwater worlds, priests began to preach that the gods had sent a judge to punish the Empire for its pride. Even officers who had never believed in legends found their hands trembling when they looked at the stars. At Central Command, new readings arrived. Energy output, immeasurable. Armor density, unscannable. Weapon systems, unknown. Origin, untraceable. The data frightened the Empire's brightest scientists. One of them, a physicist named Dr. Hellion, stared at the report in disbelief. If these readings are correct, she whispered, then this ship's reactor could power half the Empire's fleet. But the signal, it's stable. Controlled. Whoever built this, they understand energy manipulation far beyond our own. Her superior leaned in. Then what you're saying is. She looked up. Whoever they are, Admiral, they are ahead of us. That night, the Emperor met with his inner circle. Only 6 men and women in the entire galaxy were allowed in that chamber. What if it is human? Asked the intelligence minister. The Emperor stood silent. His reflection shimmered against the holographic projection of the vessel. If it is, he said slowly, then humanity is not what we thought. And if they have more? Another whispered. The Emperor's eyes turned cold. Then our reign is already ending. The chamber fell quiet. Far away, beyond the last beacons of Imperial control, the massive ship turned ever so slightly, a slow, deliberate movement. It was as if it had heard every word. On Outpost Theta, the commander's heart pounded as new readings filled the screens. The ship had changed course again. It was now moving directly toward them. He swallowed hard and whispered the words no soldier ever wanted to say. Prepare for contact. Every officer in the room went still. No one asked what kind of contact he meant, because they already knew. The monster in the dark was coming, and the Empire's age of dominance was about to meet something older, quieter, and infinitely stronger. The darkness outside the viewport was alive with tension. The massive black vessel had stopped drifting, now it moved with purpose. Straight toward Outpost Theta. Inside the command center, alarms pulsed a low red glow across pale faces. The commander stood at the front, staring at the main display. The unknown ship filled the screen, larger than any object he'd ever seen. It wasn't just close now. It was here. Distance, 1.5 million kilometers, and closing, reported the sensor officer. Speed steady. No weapon signatures detected. Keep scanning, the commander said quietly. It's hiding something. Nothing that big moves without power. The crew worked in tight silence. Even the usual chatter of status reports felt dangerous, as though speaking too loud might attract attention from the monster beyond. For a moment, the bridge lights flickered again. The crew froze. Then the lights returned, steady but dim. Someone muttered, "It's toying with us." The commander ignored it. "Central Command, this is Outpost Theta," he said into the comms. "The unknown vessel has entered visual range. No contact. No reply. Requesting further orders." Static. Then a voice came through, rough and distant. "Theta, maintain position. Reinforcements en route. Do not engage under any circumstances." "Understood," the commander said, though his gut told him the order meant nothing. Reinforcements would arrive far too late. He turned to his officers. "Keep shields low. I don't want to look threatening." "Aye, sir." But even as he spoke, the strange ship did not slow. It glided forward, silent, majestic, unstoppable. Every minute it grew larger on the view screen until it filled the stars completely. Across the Empire, in distant sectors and crowded cities, the panic spread. The news networks could not hide it anymore. Leaked footage from border stations, intercepted transmissions, whispered reports, all pointed to the same truth. Something vast and silent was entering Imperial space, and no one could stop it. On the outer colonies, people gathered around holographic displays, watching grainy feeds of the dark shape moving through the void. Some wept. Others prayed. Many cheered quietly. For those who had suffered under the Empire's iron rule, the idea of something stronger, something unafraid, felt like justice. In the heart of the Empire, the Admiralty tried to keep control. Fleets were mobilized. Defense grids activated. Patrols were doubled. But fear worked faster than orders. A young communications officer asked his superior, "Sir, what do we call it?" The admiral stared at the image before him and said only one word, Titan. And that name spread like fire. Back at Outpost Theta, Titan's shadow had swallowed everything. The stars themselves vanished behind its black hull. "It's right above us," said the sensor officer, voice shaking. "Distance, 200,000 kilometers, 150. Then, without warning, all systems on the station flickered. Lights dimmed. Screens filled with static. Gravity generators pulsed and went dark for a heartbeat before restarting. "EMP," someone shouted. "No," the engineer said, eyes wide. "It's something else. A field. Not a weapon. Like it's scanning us." The commander leaned forward. "On what frequency?" "All of them." The silence grew unbearable. You could hear the hum of the air filters and the pounding of hearts. Then a tone rang out, a low, almost musical vibration through the ship's frame. It wasn't sound exactly. More like the station itself was resonating. Every person felt it in their bones. The commander steadied himself on the console. "Report." "No energy spikes," said the engineer. "No weapon locks. It's just looking." "Looking at what?" The engineer's voice was barely a whisper. "At us." Far away, in the Imperial Palace, the Emperor watched live telemetry in a private chamber. Around him stood his most trusted advisors and the top admirals of the fleet. The holographic projection of Titan filled the center of the room. One of the admirals spoke first. "Your Majesty, we can destroy it. If we mobilize the core fleets now." The Emperor cut him off. "We cannot destroy what we don't understand." Another admiral stepped forward. "Then we test it. We send a strike fleet. Fast, small, cautious. See how it reacts." The Emperor turned slowly. "And if it reacts by erasing them, then at least we will know," the admiral said firmly. For a long time, the Emperor said nothing. He stared at the ghostly hologram, hands clasped behind his back. Then, finally, he nodded. "Do it." Within hours, the order went out. The 8th Imperial Strike Fleet, 27 warships strong, was dispatched. Their mission, observe and test the Titan. On the flagship Vigilance, Captain Saren read the orders with a heavy heart. His crew was trained, disciplined, fearless. But he had seen the data. He had seen what this thing could do. He closed the message pad and whispered, "We're the test." The fleet accelerated into the void, engines blazing blue against the endless dark. Back on Outpost Theta, the commander watched as icons appeared on his tactical display, friendly signals inbound. Relief washed through him. "The fleet is coming," said the communications officer. "Let's hope they know what they're doing," the commander murmured. But deep inside, he already knew the truth. The Empire didn't send a fleet for defense. It sent one for pride. And pride never ended well. Hours later, the strike fleet arrived. 27 gleaming ships surrounded the Titan like insects circling a sleeping beast. "Maintain formation," Captain Saren ordered. "Weapons on standby. Do not fire unless ordered." From his command deck, the dark ship loomed so vast it didn't even fit within the viewport. Its hull was motionless. Its silence was absolute. "Transmit hails," he said. "All frequencies." The communications officer worked quickly. No reply. Not even static. Just emptiness. Saren felt sweat form under his collar. "It's ignoring us." Another officer whispered, "Maybe it doesn't see us." But Saren wasn't so sure. Something that powerful didn't miss anything. The captain stood tall, his voice firm. "Prepare for controlled test. We'll fire a low-energy warning shot. Let's see how it reacts." The words hung heavy in the air. Every soul on that bridge knew this was no test. This was a gamble. "Fire," Saren said. A single beam of plasma shot through the void and struck Titan's hull. No explosion. No shield flare. No damage. Just a soft ripple of light across the black armor, as if the ship had absorbed it. The crew held their breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, faintly, the Titan stirred. Lines of blue light traced across its hull like veins awakening. Energy readings spiked off the charts. "Captain," whispered the sensor officer. "It's turning." Saren felt his throat tighten. "Get me every ship on the net." But it was already too late. The Titan's main cannon lit up, a silent pulse of white energy blooming across the void. It fired once, and one of the Empire's destroyers vanished, not shattered, not burned, simply erased. The void went still again. No follow-up, no pursuit, no voice, just silence. Back on the Vigilance, Captain Saren could only stare at the empty space where his comrade's ship had been. His voice trembled as he whispered, "That was one shot." The entire fleet sat frozen in the dark. For the first time in centuries, the Empire, proud, invincible, endless, realized what true helplessness felt like. And somewhere, far behind that black hull, the humans who had built it stayed silent. Because they didn't need to speak. Their message had already been delivered. The aftermath of the test rippled through the galaxy faster than any war cry ever could. One pulse, one shot, one vanished destroyer. That was all it took to shake the entire Galactic Empire. The strike fleet limped home in silence. No one spoke. No one dared. The captains sat at their stations, eyes hollow, hands trembling on dead consoles. The Vigilance, once a symbol of the Empire's pride, returned with its hull scorched and its spirit broken. Captain Saren filed his report himself. No embellishments, no excuses. Engagement brief. Warning shot fired. No reaction. Enemy returned fire once. Result: total destruction of ISS Falner. Weapon yield: immeasurable. Countermeasures: ineffective. Recommendation: do not engage. He signed the report with a shaking hand and locked it under encrypted priority before transmission. The message traveled straight to the throne world. In the Grand War Chamber of the Imperial Palace, admirals and intelligence officers gathered once again. The footage from the fleet played on an enormous holoscreen, a silent display of the impossible. The beam from Titan's cannon was not loud, not fiery, not violent. It was precise. A single, perfect flash, and the destroyer was gone. No wreckage, no radiation, nothing left to bury. When the playback ended, no one in the room moved. The only sound was the slow, shallow breathing of men who had commanded fleets that spanned 1,000 systems, now realizing all their power meant nothing. The Emperor stood at the edge of the projection, his hands clasped behind his back. His voice, when it came, was quiet, too quiet. "So, one human ship," he said. "One." No one answered. He turned to face them. His eyes were sharp, cold as the void itself. "We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have crushed species that worship gods of fire, that burned worlds to ash, and yet," he looked back at the fading hologram, "one human ship has done what none of them could." The admirals began to argue, fear disguised as strategy. "We must retaliate now," barked Admiral Vorn. "If we show weakness, the border worlds will rebel." "With what?" Vorn, spat another. "Our weapons bounce off its armor. You saw the scans. Then find a weakness." "There isn't one." Their voices rose, echoing through the marble chamber like thunder. The Emperor let them fight. It didn't matter. Every word was driven by the same truth none of them dared say aloud. They were terrified. When silence finally fell, the Emperor spoke again. "The humans hid this power for centuries. They watched us. Waited. Perhaps they built this ship in secret while we laughed at them." "Majesty," whispered the intelligence minister. "If they built one, there may be more." The Emperor didn't respond. He didn't need to. Everyone in that room was already thinking the same thing. Across the Empire, rumors became legend. The word Titan spread like wildfire. On mining colonies, workers gathered around flickering holoscreens, whispering that the ghost ship had erased an Imperial fleet. On farming worlds, people sang quiet songs about the humans who woke the stars. And in the back alleys of the core worlds, rebels began wearing insignias shaped like a black ship, a new symbol of defiance. The Empire tried to suppress it. Broadcasts were censored, arrests were made, but fear has no master. You can't cage a shadow. Even Imperial soldiers, hardened by endless wars, started to question. In mess halls, over recycled coffee and silent meals, they asked each other the question no one dared ask their commanders. If one human ship can do that, how many more do they have? Meanwhile, In the outer sectors, the Titan continued its slow advance. It ignored every attempt at communication, every scan, every escort sent to follow. To some, it looked like it was moving deeper into Imperial territory. To others, it seemed to wander, almost peacefully. But everyone agreed on one thing: it was never lost. It knew exactly where it was going. At Outpost Theta, the crew watched in silence as the giant ship finally passed out of sensor range. The void felt strangely empty without it, but no one felt relief. They all knew what they had seen would never be forgotten. The commander wrote his final log entry for the night. The Titan has left our sector. No damage sustained. But the men sleep with lights on. Even when they close their eyes, they see it, that black hull swallowing stars. Whatever that ship was, it looked at us. And I swear, for a second, it understood. In the throne room, the Emperor sat alone after the council had left. He looked at the hollow map of the galaxy, the Empire's grand legacy, its billions of worlds marked in gold. And then he looked at the single dark marker that represented the Titan, still moving slowly across the map like a creeping storm. He reached out, tapped it with his finger, and whispered, "Where are you going?" The question hung unanswered in the air. Because in that moment, even the Emperor, the man who ruled the stars, understood something terrible. Power was no longer his. Fear no longer belonged to the Empire. And far away, deep in the endless dark, the Titan moved onward. Silent, vast, and unhurried. It did not roar. It did not conquer. It simply reminded the galaxy that humanity had returned. The Empire had always ruled by fear. But now that fear belonged to someone else. Across thousands of worlds, the legend of the Titan grew. No one needed proof anymore. They had stories. And stories were more powerful than truth. On the core worlds, banners bearing the Emperor's golden sigil hung heavy over silent streets. People no longer looked up at them with pride. They looked up with doubt. The Imperial broadcasts continued, shouting about strength, unity, and glory, but no one listened. Soldiers who once swore undying loyalty now hesitated before following orders. Colonies stopped paying tribute. Trade fleets rerouted their ships, avoiding Imperial patrols. The once mighty structure of the galaxy's greatest empire began to tremble from within. In secret corners, rebels began to whisper the word human like a prayer. They built something stronger than the Empire. They made a god out of metal and silence. They did it without fear. In the darkness of their oppression, that idea, that a weak species had stood up to the greatest power in the stars, was hope. Inside the Imperial Palace, the Council of Admirals met for the last time in the Great Hall of Command. Holographic star charts flickered above them, displaying hundreds of red markers. Riots, strikes, revolts. Admiral Vorn slammed his fist on the table. "We must destroy the humans before they rise further. We cannot allow this myth to grow." "Destroy them?" barked another. "You saw what their ship did to Falner. A single shot erased it. You want to send fleets into that?" Vorn's voice cracked. "So we do nothing? We prepare," said Grand Admiral Saroth. "We study. We adapt. The Empire will not fall to fear." But even Saroth didn't believe his own words. His hands trembled as he zoomed in on the Titan's path, still gliding toward the inner systems, still ignoring every fleet that shadowed it. "Why doesn't it attack?" someone asked quietly. No one answered. Because that was the worst part. The waiting. The silence. It wasn't war. It was humiliation. In the following weeks, the fear became worship. On the mining moons of Dalra, workers carved human symbols into the rock and chanted to the ship of freedom. In the slave colonies of Cantaris, guards abandoned their posts, whispering that the humans were coming to liberate them. And in the backstreets of the Imperial capital, citizens painted crude images of the Titan on the walls, a black ship surrounded by stars, with 3 words scrawled beneath. "Humanity will rise." The Empire tried to crush it. Thousands were arrested. Propaganda flooded the networks. But the people no longer believed in their rulers. They believed in the ghost ship. Admiral Saroth stood on the bridge of his flagship, valiant, watching the void through reinforced glass. He had fought in 50 campaigns, crushed a dozen uprisings, faced alien hordes without flinching. But now he couldn't stop his hands from shaking. "Admiral," said his second officer, "the Titan has changed course." He turned sharply. "To where?" The officer hesitated. "Toward the core." Saratha's throat went dry. The capital. In the Emperor's private chamber, panic finally broke through his composure. "Mobilize the home fleet," he shouted. "Every ship, every weapon. The Titan must not reach this system." His generals scattered like frightened birds, barking orders across comms, summoning fleets that stretched across light years. Thousands of ships gathered, dreadnoughts, carriers, cruisers, all aimed at a single destination, the silent intruder that had haunted them for months. Across the void, engines roared to life, formations locked, weapons armed. The Empire had never assembled such force in one place. And yet, none of it mattered. Because when the Titan arrived, it did not come to fight. It emerged from hyperspace like a slow eclipse. Its hull absorbed every beam of light, a black wound in the stars. The massive fleet arrayed before it, a wall of steel and pride, held position. Thousands of gunners waited for the order. But the order never came. Inside the Imperial command ship, Saroth stared at the tactical screen. "It's not powering weapons," he whispered. "It's just looking at us." Some soldiers deserted, claiming they'd rather serve under human command. Others began building their own ships, copying fragments of Titan's design leaked from captured data. Fear had become faith. And somewhere, deep within a forgotten human stronghold beyond mapped space, engineers stood before a vast hangar. Inside it, shadows of other Titans loomed, half-finished, waiting, silent. One technician looked up from her console. "Do you think the Empire will try again?" Her commander smiled. "No, not for a long time. They've learned their lesson. And if they forget..." The commander's eyes hardened. "Then we'll remind them again." Months later, near the edge of the galaxy, a patrol ship from a minor Imperial remnant drifted through a quiet sector. Its scanners suddenly blinked. A faint shadow appeared. Enormous. Familiar. Moving without sound. The crew froze. "It can't be," the captain whispered. "They left. They..." The shadow passed behind a nebula, and the signal vanished. No weapon fire. No communication. Nothing. Just silence. The captain didn't report it. He didn't need to. Everyone on board knew what they'd seen. And everyone on board kept their eyes on the stars, waiting to see if it would come back. The Titan had disappeared beyond known space. But it had left something behind, something no empire could erase. A lesson carved into the heart of a galaxy. Humanity was no longer prey. No longer weak. No longer silent. They had risen from the ashes of a forgotten world, built a weapon out of legend, and faced an empire without firing more than a single shot. And somewhere, across the endless dark, that black ship glided through the void once more, its hull gleaming faintly in the starlight, its engines quiet as breath. It was not a ghost. It was a promise. A promise that the galaxy would never again forget the name of the species that taught it fear. Humanity. And in the silence between stars, their legend whispered. "We came from a small world, but our shadow covers the stars."